Now, Jude didn't want me to be negative, so I better turn this around pretty quick. It's important not to be negative. You know, I was speaking in Bristol a few years ago, and I gave this speech about all the wicked things that were happening during the War on Terror and how our liberties were going to hell in a handcart. It was a brilliant speech, I'm sure. And a wonderful young woman academic, she didn't embarrass me in the main event, but afterwards she came up to me. She took me to one side and she said, "Shami, that was a wonderful speech, and I learnt so much about all these terrible things that are happening in our name. But do please remember that Martin Luther King never said, 'I have a nightmare.'" So I've been working on that. I'm not doing so well yet. I'm working on it. So as we're talking about getting our hands on the levers of power, rather than just reciting all the statistics, what about thinking about what we might actually do instead? And how we would get our hands on the levers of power, and what are the levers for making real and radical change on gender equality in this country and beyond? Well, for a start, I think transparency is incredibly important. We've had equal pay legislation for over 30 years. Why isn't it working? Well, I think it's just not practical, realistic legislation when it is left to individual women and workers, with an absence of legal aid and all the other problems that would stop an individual taking legal action. I don't think that legislation is working in its current form. And if we were serious about equal pay, we could force transparency by way of audit. Every company gets audited. Every company has to file a tax return. Why shouldn't equal pay be a matter of audit, of independent audit, and not just left to the workers who often don't know and aren't equipped and resourced to take on employers? Why not? Successive governments spent many boom years building wonderful infrastructure for education in this country. There are some beautiful school buildings, beautiful university buildings all over this country. Why shouldn't there be wraparound childcare in all of those beautiful buildings that otherwise sit empty for large parts of the day? And, you know, people will tell you, oh no, it costs too much. The status quo costs too much to families, to men and women and children struggling with the lack of affordable childcare, which would be such a game changer in this country. And why can't we gradually move, or not so gradually move, not just from maternity to parental leave in the workplace, but to periods of leave in people's lives for all sorts of reasons? But ultimately, we need affirmative action. We need a change in the law of this land, I believe, to at least allow for, across the board, affirmative action in places where there is great inequality in the representation of the sexes. And in some cases, I don't think we should allow for affirmative action. We should require it. It is simply not good enough for institutions of the greatest power, whether it's the judiciary, parliament, or boards, to be left as they are now, or to be left for gradualist change. You know, some people don't want to give up power. Some people don't want to share power. And the status quo is not meritocratic, because we are not dealing with a meritocracy. We are dealing with a post-apartheid situation, I hope. The World Economic Forum tells us that on current estimates, we're going to achieve parity in 2133. How do they work that out? They just made that up, didn't they? It's like, think of a number, any number, for the dystopian sci-fi novel that we're going to write. You know, it's not 1984, it's 2133. Well, I don't know about you, but with all the Botox in the world and all the robotics and the replacements, I'm not going to be around in 2133. So I'm impatient. Some of you look young enough to be around in 20, but I'm not going to be around. You'll be around in 2133. There's all sorts of stuff that's happening. You can live forever, but I'm not going to be around. So I am impatient for change. I want us to take radical steps in the intimate sphere and in the social and political sphere to really bring that year forward. I can't even contemplate 2133. I can contemplate 2018. Look, friends, I am impatient for change, and so now I think it's not just about reeling off the statistics. It's about radical action at home, in the workplace, and in the country, and all over the world. Have a wonderful wow, and thank you for listening.